Good day, everybody. So what I wanted to talk about on this video is the ongoing conflict between India and China that is taking place in the Ladakh region. And that is kind of in this mountainous Himalayan area that runs along Jammu and Kashmir. But at the same time, this conflict could theoretically run from the entire northwestern India border all the way to the northeastern border. And as we know, over the summer there was an incident in which Chinese and Indian soldiers engaged in hand-to-hand conflict. And that sounds like it was an incredibly brutal fight in which dozens on both sides were killed or wounded. Well, dozens killed. I think up to 20 Indian soldiers were killed, and quite possibly 20 to 40 People's Liberation Army soldiers were also possibly killed or wounded. So right now things have kind of calmed down in terms of any sort of actual fighting, and it appears the Chinese have come to grips with the fact that some of their infrastructure in these northern mountains aren't up to par in terms of being ready for a major conventional conflict in this area. And as we speak, the Chinese are in fact building these forces and these infrastructures to be able to counter the Indian armed forces, which a lot of their infrastructure is much closer to the actual combat areas where combat could take place compared with the Chinese. As you can see, the Chinese are facing a much more expansive area that is heavily mountains and could pose significant challenges for them. Now, the biggest issue for the Indians is their drone capability. I think if combat were to start now, the Chinese would have a significant advantage because of their drone advantage. They would have the ability to, and again, if this occurred now, a lot of these Indian formations that are now, a lot of these mountain divisions would be targeted by Chinese drones. The Indians right now do not have the same drone capability that the Chinese have and would be at an incredible disadvantage. The other issue is, of course, the Air Force. Outside of just looking at the drone capability, the Indian Air Force is a hodgepodge. I mean, its main multi-role fighter aircraft right now is the Su-30 MKI, which is a Russian manufactured Su-30 that was specifically designed with India in mind. They have probably just over 200 of these that are able to take flight. But again, we've not really seen the Su-30 in combat as of yet. The other aircraft that the Indians use that has recently garnered a lot of attention is the Rafale, a fourth plus generation French multi-role fighter aircraft. Very good design, a lot of technology in this aircraft. Only problem is India right now probably has less than 10 that they could utilize in the event of conflict. India also has a few dozen of the Mirage 2000s, and then beyond that, it's just it doesn't look good for India. They do have some upgraded MiG-21s, but again, we've seen that Pakistani F-16s are able to handle those upgraded MiG-21s with not too many problems. The Chinese, while they have a lot of Russian technology, the J-16, the J-11, J-11BS, it is Russian technology per se, but there is a lot of Chinese technology that comes into play as well, which in some cases is copied from Western technology. You really see that in the J-10. You see that in the J-20 as well. Their next generation stealth aircraft. So you would see those aircraft come into play as well in any conflict, especially the J-20 and the J-10 as well. Which the distinction with those aircraft again, I think those are more Chinese designs based on Western and Israeli technology. So I think the Chinese Air Force would definitely have the upper hand against India. Now their air bases would be farther away than the Indian air bases, but we'd really have to see how this pans out. I think also the ballistic missile capacity of China is much more greater than India, but I don't believe that if a limited conflict would occur, that we would see significant use of these say DF-26 ballistic missiles that the Chinese possess. I'm not sure they would use those, but I do believe they would use their drone capacity, much like we have seen Turkish and Azeri forces utilize its drone capabilities against the Armenians. While possibly not an exact repeat of what occurred, I think we would see, as the conflict progressed, we would see significant video footage if, in fact, the Chinese were to release that footage of Chinese drones operating in the same way we have seen the Turkish and Azeri drones just put a serious hurting on the Armenians. So the Indians are pretty adaptable, and they are going to need to find a way to quickly counter the Chinese drone capability and field their own drone forces as well. I do think the soldiering skills of the Indians, especially some of these mountain divisions that operate in these areas, are probably more proficient and probably have a better warrior culture than what the Chinese can field. But again, that's not going to matter if drones are killing them in mass the same way as we saw what happened in Azerbaijan and Armenia.